All right, welcome. I'm going to start now. My name is Bill Fanning. I'm the CEO of Talk and excited you guys are here. Really looking for discussion. My goal today is to have a conversation around technology, and there's a multi-purpose point here. There is a goal of being able to set up the organization for our vendor marketplace. So I wanted to learn about technology people are using and some of the technology we're interested in, but I also wanted to have a conversation around our experiences, what we're doing. So our agenda today, hang on one sec, is I wanted to introduce and have there is a bad echo. I'm sorry about that, Alyssa. Hang on one sec. Let me see if I find a better spot. Hang on one second. All right, sorry everyone. I'll try again from here and see if it's a little bit better. So our vendor marketplace is going to be launching on July 15th, and the goal behind it is to introduce really interesting technologies so you guys have access to learn about some of the newer things that are happening in the market. So a little bit of the conversation today is just to try and make this a little bit better, so I can get some clarity and gain some insights from you as TA leaders on some of the technologies you're using. The other thing I just wanted to mention is our referral contest. I'm excited that we have some interesting tickets for RecFest, which if you haven't looked at it, please do. It's an awesome event. I'm not affiliated or associated anything with them. I just know out of the events that are in the industry, I found that to be one of the better ones that are out there. And then really, again, our goal today is just to discuss technology. So when I think about that, what I'm looking at is the categories of technology. And this is how I think about the flow, but I'm certainly open to different ideas, from recruitment and marketing all the way through onboarding, everything from first touch to first day. That's how I look at it. And so I wanted to talk about how we're seeing the market change, how we're seeing AI introduced, and what are the technologies we're looking at or using or considering as we go through this process. So I wanted to start with an icebreaker. And really, this is for anyone here. But really want to have a quick conversation of, let's talk about a time when we picked a technology or a technology partner, and we had a really valid business reason for bringing that technology in. And we didn't have the best experience, the most positive experience possible. And so I didn't know if anybody could share any thoughts on that. If you're interested, you can just drop your comments in chat, or if you want to turn your camera on, I'd love to talk a little bit about it and learn from your experiences. But I thought that might be a great place to start and go from there. Anyone? All right. Well,
is it any technology or?
I think any technology in the TA process, and really what I was curious about, I'm trying to get down to, is some of the learning lessons. And when we're looking at and evaluating technologies, what are some of the areas we found challenges in the actualization of the value of what we thought we were getting? Like, did it do what they said it was going to?
Okay. Yeah. I was building out a sourcing team in my last organization, and we selected a tool that, promised good data. And, when they show you the sourcing capabilities, it's usually software developers. And I'm like, well, we don't search for software developers. And although, we had a couple of good searches, we ended up finding that a lot of the data was inaccurate. And we ended up, thankfully, although we were signed on for a year contract, we had so much backup and information to show the inaccuracies in contact information and stuff that we were able to get out of the contract and refund and get it refunded.
Oh, that's great. And it's good to the sourcing challenges out there and the data integrity from the sourcing, depending on how static that data is absolutely something I've heard before. One of the wins that I just heard you say, though, is, as we're going down this path and putting agreements in place, having termination for cause outlined is certainly important. So, Anne-Marie, you raised your hand. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And you're on mute, Anne-Marie, if you didn't know. Oh, there you go. You're still on mute. I don't know how to unmute you if I can. Let's see, participants.
You should be good now, no?
Oh, I should be able to hear you now. You're off mute.
Oh.
Nope.
All right.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to jump in and share some stories. But that is part of what I wanted to really talk about and think about as we're going down this process. So one of the questions I had, and maybe we can start with recruitment, marketing, and sourcing. What are some of the technologies today that we're finding effective? And it can be in general, it can be a specific vertical, but I'd love to hear people's thoughts in that area. And the way I was thinking about talking about this was like this. What are the winning technology partners we're using? What are they delivering in terms of value? And in that process, what learnings could you share that some of us may, like if there's something that would help us do better? As we get on and think about these things, please share them so we can do things a little bit more intelligently. So,
Bill, just to clarify, Bill, are we also looking for service providers? I see it says technology partners, but for instance, in recruitment marketing, there might be, almost like advertising firms and stuff that don't offer a technology, but are we looking for everything across the board?
Everything across the board. I think that's a great call out. So if you're using a service provider or a technology provider in that, that's kind of what I wanted to learn about. So maybe first we could start with the sourcing area and recruitment marketing.
I've used quite a few tools. Right now I'm using Loxo as well as Exact Buyer, and I'm also using another tool called Quickly. I mean, no one tool does it all for sourcing, unfortunately. So oftentimes, multiple tools are very beneficial. What I really love about Loxo is that it can be used as a CRM for, the corporate side. If you're doing corporate recruiting, if you're doing, agency recruiting, it can track not only your candidates, but your clients, your billings and stuff like that. But the data has been really outstanding. It's super user friendly. I've really enjoyed the tool altogether. And the Chrome extension even works in LinkedIn Recruiter. And then,
Really?
yeah, surprisingly. And then this other tool that I happen to get referred to is a gentleman who, it's very not widely known, but Quickly. It allows you to totally scrape and download an entire up to 1,000 profiles and contact information out of Recruiter.
That's great. That's awesome to hear. Thank you very much. So
Yeah.
are you, as you look at those different tools, are they being used to target different types of people or different categories of like a technical versus a?
Yes, I've used both, even the Exact Buyer tool, because Exact Buyer is also kind of one of those that you could do for, both client and, candidates. It also alerts you when a company is looking for specific types of roles, which has been really cool. But all three have given me, pretty good background, like pretty good data and information on anything from highly technical roles to, corporate roles. So, Quickly is more of a, basically a scraper to be able to extract all the information from, LinkedIn Recruiter. So if I'm trying to show a hiring manager, one of my, groups, hey, here's all what we're working on, here's the data, it looks a lot better and it's more informative than just saying, hey, yes, we're searching.
Sure. I like that.
If you wouldn't mind, it would be awesome if you could put either the names or the URLs, even just the names is probably fine in the chat, and I'll try to look those up and get URLs and include that in the follow-up after the event for people to review.
Quickly
Yeah,
might
that'd
be
be-
difficult. Norman, I'll have to send that to you because the gentleman who does it is a little, it's kind of a secretive thing, but I'll gladly send it to you because it's a freaking cool tool.
Cool.
So I'll get that information. I'll send it to you and then you can figure out how to share it.
Great, thank you.
Well, my experience has been from a sales standpoint, anything that's scraping LinkedIn could catch their attention at some point. But I do know that is a great way to get candidate data. So they sound like an interesting platform. In terms of sourcing, I mean, we have some traditional tools out there that have obviously made the news lately for their downsizing and for missing probably inflated revenue growth numbers that are up the last 4 or 5 years. But when we think about Indeed, LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, how is usage gone over the last 12 months? Are those still predominant tools, or are there things that are coming into the market that are supplementing what we used to use them for, to be able to get the background on people a little bit more intelligently than we used to? And potentially what I'm thinking about is like an organization like Seek Out, or somebody that may have been using the AI sourcing tools to go out and source and bring people back matched against the job description. Is anyone taking advantage of a platform like that?
I missed that last part. Can you just repeat that again?
Yeah, what I was saying is there are, and I think, Alyssa, you mentioned this in terms of something you were using in the past, but from my experience, I've worked for a couple companies or with a couple companies that, and Michelle, that's great. Hire Easy is exactly what I was thinking about. Some AI-driven sourcing tools that are able to bring back people from multiple sources and compare them against the requisition we're trying to fill, so we can start evaluating applicants as they come in based on their fit capabilities to the role which we're working on.
Yeah, ExactBuyer does that. So does Oxo. Quickly does not. Quickly is strictly, a scraping tool. But both those, ExactBuyer especially, you can give it a, what you're looking for, and it has a whole AI component. I don't know
Awesome.
about some of the others because I was using like Gem and Seamless and some of those other ones, and I wasn't getting good data, so that's why I switched.
Gotcha. And I will echo on the Seamless front. As a sales leader, running sales teams in the past, I have been challenged by the quality of their data specifically. I've heard it's gotten better, but I haven't used it for about at least 24 months. But in the past, that had been a challenge in terms of bouncing when trying to reach people. So I'm not sure if that's similar to what you found, but that's an interesting aspect. Michelle, would you be willing to share a little bit about your Hire Easy experience?
Sure. It's been a little bit of a challenge because to use it best, you should integrate with your email. So getting the approval to do that through my company was a little challenging. So that took a while. Once we did, some of the advantages of it, LinkedIn is doing as well with the new ability to schedule follow-up messages. So I've seen a difference both in LinkedIn Recruiter as well as Hire Easy. When you have those automated follow-up messages that continue out, it seems to be, we definitely have a higher response rate. Like it definitely makes a difference where, you're able to customize messages or use AI to generate messages. And it's been really helpful. I've definitely seen an increase in candidate response from that. I am worried about Hire Easy. We were deciding between Seek Out and Hire Easy when we chose. So seeing some of that and following some of the webinars on just LinkedIn kind of blocking profiles and some of the actions they're taking, it could be really detrimental to some of these tools. So, and LinkedIn always likes to be the number one. So they seem to be taking actions to keep doing that. So we've cut down our LinkedIn recruiter, to just one user and then a user that I forget what it's called. It's a little more of a limited exposure user. But we may end up being forced to go back to 2 or more seats there. So.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges when you select a product that's built on another vendor or relies heavily on another vendor. There is an opportunity for that vendor to release a competitive product and then block all of the people that they're partnering with, so they are not using it. So I could see that could be a challenge at some point for Hire Easy. But thank you for your feedback. One quick question. Why did you select Hire Easy over Seco? What was the differentiator for you to make that decision?
We really enjoyed the competitive information and the usability. So for instance, when you're searching a candidate, you see their profile, you could hover over the company and it would pop up a little pop out that would say the company is publicly held, they do XYZ, and it would give you kind of insight to what the company does. If anyone who's sourced knows, like half the time, if you don't know what that company does, it just makes it easier to kind of find the right candidates and the people you want without clicking on anything. And then you can click directly into their LinkedIn profile. I found that they had quite a lot of information. Like there was almost always an email or a phone number. There almost always was a way to contact people. So we just liked the usability of it better. It fit better for us and what we were doing. And there is some pretty cool competitive data you can pull out of there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's so for anybody who's considering finding or using a technology, that's great feedback. I appreciate it. I have so there was a question talking a little bit about Find 'em. I've heard of them, but I haven't used them a lot. So if anybody has any feedback to share, that'd be great, because I think interestingly to us, the source of the data is the source of the data, but there's a lot of people putting together some interesting tools on how to best use that data to save time and to find people quickly. So I'm curious how Find 'em will fit into that model. So Eric, you mentioned that you had seen a demo of the Talent Insights and it was very impressive, which is great feedback on that. I haven't seen a demo of the technology, but I certainly know the name that they've been into the market for quite a while. So that's good to know. All right. So one of the areas that I'm curious if anyone has taken advantage of, because I've seen a lot of people writing about it, is the interview technologies that are out there to supplement the interview process. There's tools, there's AI engines, there's structuring. Is anybody using anything in the interviewing process? So we talked a little bit about recruitment marketing, talked about sourcing, but now we're moving into, okay, we found somebody and they have interest and we want to start engaging them. Are there any technologies that are helping do that a little more effectively?
We're using MetaView and we love it. And you can try it for free. So it's been an amazing tool for us. We were exploring quite a few different interviewing tools. There are some that are very formatted with, so if you have an interview template or, a screening tool with specific questions that you want people to use, there are some other great tools out there. I think it was Hire Guide and Pillar were a couple we looked at. But MetaView, what we liked about it is, I've been recruiting for a really long time, and number one, it was free to try. Number two, it's just a transcriber of your interview, and then you can use AI to pull out. You can create your own template. You can just do a too long didn't read. You can do a whole bunch of summaries of your interview. We also use it for intake calls. So, when we're doing our intake calls on, a new position, it'll summarize the call for us as well. So it's been awesome. My recruiter basically said, if you don't buy this for me, I'm buying it for myself. So it's, I recommend everyone, you can try it for free. So, please give it a try. I put it in there.
That is awesome to hear. That is certainly a great testament to any technology that's out there. And so I've been fortunate to use a lot of different extensions and Chrome extensions and things. And when a person comes to you and says, either get it for the team or I'll get it for myself, that's testament that it's making a difference. So that's great to hear. Is anyone else using anything similar to MetaView in that process? Coming from Unleash a couple weeks ago, I had noticed that there was a increase in a number of interview analytical platforms, and I'm just curious what are the ones that we may be experiencing?
I know in the technical space, there's a company called HackerRank that works with assessments, but you can also, in an IT setting, while doing a virtual interview, the panel of interviewers and the interviewee can actually live whiteboard while in the interview, so they can work on code and basically test out the environment.
It's
I like that.
really cool. I've used it as well.
HackerRank?
Yes, it's awesome.
That is great to hear. I have been a fan of them, and I've seen them at a couple of shows, but I don't know a lot of people that use them on a regular basis. So that's great feedback. I appreciate that. So maybe using that to transition a little. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so far, the largest problem is that they do have a high turnover internally.
They have a high turnover at HackerRank?
We've been working with them for over a year, and I think we are on rep number 7.
Oh, that is a good amount of turnover.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting area to talk about. And it's, for me, part of how I actualize value from any partner I work with is the service experience once you're a customer and their ability to make you reach success. So I think that's a really relevant point. We can talk about that in a second, but one question, Kelly, you mentioned when you're talking about HackerRank and the whiteboarding, kind of made me start to think about the assessment capability. So I'm just curious from the group, skills-based talent evaluation is, I mean, that was definitely the number one thing I took away from Unleash as I walked around. So I'm sure that there's probably a lot of assessment usage, and I'm curious what technologies we're using, and interesting, how effective are they? Do they have drop off? Are the candidates using them? Are you getting the value from it? Because that sounded to be that seemed to be one of the sound bites that a lot of the assessment vendors talked about when I was in Las Vegas and listening to some of them extol the virtues of their individual platforms.
I can jump in.
Oh, that'd be great.
I'm going to have to go shortly, but we're seriously evaluating Phenom. So Phenom originally, a CRM tool, but they're heavily focused in skills-based hiring. We're actually looking at them to replace our ATS because they do have an ATS module and they are in the creation stage of onboarding. So anyone who's used Phenom knows, overlaying it over top of Workday or UKG or any of those kind of clunky tools for recruitment. They're pretty awesome in most of the things they do. Would love to network with anyone who's using Phenom in any capacity, but they have a really high focus on skills-based hiring and using AI to do it as well, which has been pretty cool.
It's interesting to hear that you're cutting the ATS out. That was I was speaking with some executives at Phenom, and they said in the next 10 years, the ATS isn't going to exist. It's a clunky piece of software that is a middleman. And really what you need is a CRM and an HRIS, and that's it, and or an HCM or whatever you call it, right? And that the ATS is just kind of getting in the way. So as Phenom's got like 40 something percent share of the market share in CRMs, and most of them are overlaying them on top of a Workday, on top of something like that. That is, you can kind of bypass then the ATS functions of a Workday and go straight to their HCM. But if you've got these standalone ATSs, there's a potential that those are going by the wayside,
Yeah, and Phenom's offering an ATS solution. They're wrapping it in, but then it's got so many other parts of it as well, which has been what we're interested in.
How do you think organizations will be able to go with a CRM if they have to follow OFCCP compliance?
Well, I think
that's why I think Phenom is offering the ATS, because we are the same. We're government contractors. We require all kinds of stuff. So there are parts of that they have to remain compliant.
Yeah.
Nice.
And from my background, I've worked, and I used to run America's Job Exchange before it was acquired by Circa. And so I think the OFCCP compliance standpoint is something that can be added or created in a platform. But I do see the ATS system struggling in a couple fronts. The other one that's challenging is the number of integrations. So if you have an ATS platform and you want to take advantage, by the way, this is anecdotal. I don't have data behind this. This is more opinion than fact. But I do see a number of ATS platforms requiring multiple integrations to third-party best-in-class technologies. And to me, that's the key pinnacle of breakage right there, is when you have all of these integrations. So being able to find a platform that eliminates some of that requirement, I think is really powerful. So, I have not heard of Pinpoint as an ATS system being used. So that's great feedback, Alyssa. The one I had had a little bit of experience with recently was Team Taylor. I don't know if anyone's using that, but I saw that to be a very effective system as well. So anyone else using any of the assessment vendors out there that are commonplace in our market and getting good results with them? And off the top of my head, I'm thinking like Predictive Index. I know Infor is a big assessment vendor, but curious what other ones we may be using. And Carrie, you keep leaning forward and clutching your hands. So I keep waiting for you to say something. You keep looking like you're, and then you don't. But it kind of cracks me up because I almost want to call on you because it looks like you always have something to share.
We're in the middle of assessing assessment, so it's a timely topic. So that was my
Awesome.
lean in. We are in the midst of just thinking this through right now.
Well, it's maybe for a second, just because you haven't made the selection, I'm curious, what are some of the qualities that you're assessing the vendors on? Outside of obviously the investment that's required, are you looking at them based on their focus of a specific industry or a specific candidate type?
Yeah, we're a couple steps behind that. We've had an assessment vendor in place and we're working through current state and ROI on current state before we start to explore, is there a case for a broader assessment set of tools that might help us to pinpoint talent in a more effective way. So we're not quite to the spot that you're describing yet in terms of assessing vendors.
Gotcha. Awesome. That's interesting because I can certainly appreciate the amount of focus it must go into before you even start looking at vendors. There's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done to understand the business case for making the change. One of the interesting things that I've always found interesting in the assessment world, and certainly saw a lot when I was at Unleash recently, is the myriad of ways to assess people. So there are some assessment vendors that have one stock assessment that's supposed to be perfect for anybody. And then there's other assessment vendors that have a myriad of skills-based roles, virtual simulations. I'm curious, have anyone have any experience with one or the other and find it to be more effective? Well, I'll definitely share my thought is that in looking at and talking with a number of the vendors that are in this space, I found that a specific targeted assessment for a specific role or skill set or background, to me, seemed like it would be more engaging than a generic stock myriad of questions that seem more like a school-based standard testing approach. So I think that personally, for me, I would find that a really effective way to complete an assessment with some of the applicants to keep them from dropping off because it's engaging and it's specific and unique to them. Very cool. So I'm curious in the total scope of what we've been talking about and position independent, I focus independent, whether it's sourcing, recruitment, marketing, assessing, whatever. How are you guys seeing the market evolve? In terms of so I think the conversation around Phenom is a great example of that, right? We're looking at a platform that I think the genesis of Phenom people back in the day, before they dropped people and just became Phenom, was career page landing pages that address the specific needs of the people coming in, and they've expanded so far into the market. It's phenomenal to watch. Paradox is another platform that now is an ATS system and has a unique had a unique start, has a broad spectrum. How are the other technologies in the marketplace evolving? Usage, being able to use them for more functional capabilities, eliminated relationships, simple tech stack. Are those areas that are coming into play because of the technology advancements that we have at our disposal? Nobody's getting sold by their ATS system about the incredible new feature. Why they're going to be able to solve all of our needs. Somebody out there has got to be experiencing that. One area that I'm curious about, how many people are shifting away from traditional ATS systems to a platform like Phenom? Is that something that a lot of people are considering or thinking about as you consider the future of where you want to make technology investments or put your stack together? And it's kind of an antiquated term in itself, tech stack, but I've always been stuck on using it. But as you think about the technology you're using, is consolidation and being able to take advantage of broader services from one platform making its way down to you?
Hey, Bill. This is Ryan. So I've done a lot of ATS implementations thankfully, in my career so far. But we're in UKG, and I love ATSs. Like, I miss them. I think they're great because they're designed for people in our world and they take care of our needs. But I have found, now I'm going through another implementation as we speak, going to Workday, and I'm finding that the business is trying to consolidate more than anything else, right? So we're going with Workday, and it's going to do everything from like finance, project management, like HR, recruiting, you name it. And recruiting is like a small piece, right? But unfortunately, it's not designed for recruiting, right? So there's a lot of limitations. You end up got to add on different things to it. But the biggest thing, and I talked to other people, is that I'm finding that, yeah, recruiting exists, but they're trying to do more consolidation and integration with like one tool across an organization instead of having, a payroll tool and this tool and that tool. They want to just have one, which allows you to scale an organization, but at the same time, not everybody's going to be happy, right? So everybody's going to have to miss out on something. So.
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting approach. And look, obviously Workday has become the 800-pound gorilla, right? So from a vendor standpoint, everybody wants to integrate with them. I know a horde of companies that are using them. And certainly they've grown in such a enterprise, is the way to think about it. And that does people a need for best-in-class technologies. I mean, there are businesses in our industry that I think have based their model around supporting um, and I think that's interesting feedback we just got from Alexander in terms of he's trying to assess how AI-based systems can harmonize with the TA function and keep the human touch. That's a great point. And it's funny, I'm actually at a sales conference and we were just listening to a website AI bot that mimics human voice that answers potential customer questions. So you do not have to have a number of physical people sitting there answering phones. And so that I think translates or transfers very interestingly into the recruiting space. And we have a number of text-based and chat bots out there. Is anyone using a technology like that and getting value from it? And Melissa, that's an interesting side point. I do think that Workday is a predominant platform that's out there. They've done an exceptionally good job of growing in the marketplace. I think, they've done a good job. And I think that some of the larger vendors out there that used to own massive market share, like Taleo into Oracle, did a good job of making it available for them to go get. So I see both of those kind of fueling the growth of Workday.
Yeah, even at my last employer, we had Lever as our ATS and Workday as our HRIS, and there was a big push from our IT department to implement Workday, right? But we just felt like there were some challenges with that. But I definitely am hearing other people I'm talking to in the space, like everyone seems to be undergoing a Workday implementation project soon. Or for everything.
Yeah. And coming from so I started my career after the military. One of the organizations I worked for was PeopleSoft, which is in some ways the precursor to Workday based on the people who founded Workday. And same thing, like we would get an IT department and we would make them PeopleSoft focused. And then everything would move to people bolt-on technologies on top of it. So I can definitely see Workday kind of following a similar growth model. Eric, I see your hand up. I'll let you go.
Yeah, thanks. And look, I've gone through one Workday implementation and then another Workday environment job, where I had to do a certain number of updates as well. Workday, again, because it's end to end, has that advantage, but it's also at a very steep price point. So unless you are coming from an organization that has a certain number of people, it is the value there is not valid, right? So large organization, enterprise level, fantastic, but anything less than that, then it's just too expensive. And as someone said, the Workday recruiting module has its limitations. So there's certain things that you would add to it, like from a scheduling perspective. Rooster is an amazing tool that you can add to it, but it's an expensive one. I think if we got a quote, and I think it was like around 100,000 or something like that, and very expensive. So there are certain limitations for sure. And I was interested in seeing all the list of the ATSs at a different level, because if you have a small organization, you're not going to go and get Workday. So
no, that is a great point. It definitely has its place in the market, and there's a wide opening for companies that are not well suited for Workday to find other platforms. And I've found or seen in some of the marketing that there's a number of great platforms coming out. Or interestingly, more interesting to me, there's a number of niche providers that, for example, did assessments, or like Paradox that started as a chatbot and are now moving to bring that ATS functionality into it. I'm curious, is anyone using a platform? So we talked first a little bit about Phenom doing that, right? They're moving to become the CRM ATS system. I know iCIMS from a high level seems to be going from the ATS to the CRM and adding in a lot of that other technology, certainly through their acquisitions. What are there some other platforms that we're using that kind of seem to be scaling the scope of what they do to deliver more value to the customers?
I mean, I know HireVue from the perspective of the starting to use a lot more on the AI side of things. We had HireVue, but we were, again, our legal department, very conservative, and they didn't want the AI to take over or do things of that nature, or even managers having access to recorded interviews. So it was, we had our hands tied behind our back. We had the tool, we just weren't using it to its full capability.
Yeah. And Ryan, that's a good point, that the larger systems, I feel that you feel lack the recruiting tools needed. I agree with that. While it may be a little bit dated, but my background when we were selling ERP Workday type software was that recruiting was traditionally layered into the overall package for the company for free, right? So what we were core focused on was getting the HRIS, supply chain, finance, the different core modules of the ERP platform, and we would give different components to the team with no cost. And so that would maybe fuel some of the need to move things from a unique ATS system, for example, onto Workday as a core platform. So great question from Melissa. Does anyone have any experience with good interview scheduling tools?
I'm pretty sure in my organization, I am the internet or the interview scheduling tool.
I can appreciate that. I can definitely, and Alexander, thanks for jumping in there. And Calendly is definitely a great tool. It's taken on the majority of that free scheduling tool that people use for a myriad of functions. I know as an applicant, my frustration with interview scheduling would be the speed in which it takes to get that interview scheduled. So I talk to a recruiter would have to go talk to our hiring manager. They may come back with options. I would select an option. By the time it came back, maybe one of those options is now off the table. And Kelly, this is probably a process you are familiar with, of going back and forth and trying to get that done. Having the hiring managers schedule availability to be able to plug right into the interview, get the interviews plugged directly onto that, to me is a core need. So
yeah, and I think
oh, go ahead.
I think Oh, no, and I think what my question was really around, yes, I mean, most of the ATSs have some sort of scheduling tool that are great for the recruiters, right?
Yep.
To like Calendly, or we've used Acuity in the past, or most of the ATS have it integrated in, but it was more around that scenario that you just mentioned, is getting the scheduling with, interviewers. I'm coming from a management consulting background where the people doing the interviews are actual, client facing consultants. So they're busy. They have their own calendar and client calendars, right? So we use interview blocks. So people put blocks on their calendar, but again, those change and they're manually, utilized, right? So trying to find a way. There are tools like Good Time, we had explored, but it didn't work for our needs given that we can't just book directly on people's calendars. But that was a good tool. It just wasn't effective for us because we essentially wanted to pick, these are the times that people are giving that are available, and use that versus most scheduling tools book based on, when people have openings on their calendar saying, hey, I'm going to open up every, Friday and have this, see what's available on my calendar, something like that.
Yeah.
So,
I have heard positive feedback on Good Time as well. I've never used it myself, but I've heard in other circles that it is a quality scheduling project. So thank you for that feedback. You're an expert. Ryan asked a question on Rooster in terms of costly. Any thoughts you could share there?
Yeah, the reason I asked that, just because, as I find, right, like we talk about tools are cool, but they're all expensive, right? Everything comes typically at a cost, right? And I've unfortunately found that recruiting is not always on the top of mind when it comes to spending money. So, and as we're going through this Workday implementation, you can't schedule interviews. There's a lot of limitations with Workday, and even our consultant goes, "Yep, you need to use Rooster." And so now we're looking at it, and it's like an additional cost. But one of the big things I always keep trying to find is tools that aren't always costly, are free, or there's other opportunities, right? Because at the end of the day, they're easy to test, but unfortunately, a lot of these tools, I got a quote the other day for a tool, and it was like, $100,000. Like, I don't have that sitting around, right? And so it's one of those things I think I keep finding is that these tools are all great, but everything always ends up coming at a cost that typically recruiting has to, I feel like, battle for sometimes. So.
Yeah, that is a really interesting perspective, battling for it. Eric, thank you for that update of 100K and a quote 9 months ago. Interesting. As you look at the tool stack you're using, is there ever a financial evaluation or review of the budget? I'm sure there is. So let me restate this. How often do you have to justify the expenses you are incurring for the different tools you're using in terms of are you getting the value from them that you anticipated? So, for example, does your finance team come in and say, here's your budget, here's what you're spending, tell me why we're going to renew these tools? You guys have much more forgiving financial teams than what I'm used to you working with. So sales, from a sales standpoint and running operations, that was an area we looked at quite a bit in terms of renewal timeframes and are we going to renew the tool? Are we getting the value from it? Awesome. Well, kind of guided the conversation for the last 50 minutes. I'm curious, and if there isn't any, we can add some thoughts and close up. But I'm curious: is there any other areas in the journey of from a candidate applicant to an employee? Are there any other technology areas that anyone had any questions on or would like to learn more about? And that's beneficial for me because as I look at people that can come in and talk with us, or areas we can focus on, that gives me some guidance in terms of making our discussions meaningful. So, so simple question: are there technologies that you're interested in learning more about? Besides AI, that seems to be a given.
Is anybody evaluating anything right now and want some feedback on people that are using those tools?
All right, well, Alexander, thanks for the update. I appreciate that. That's good feedback. Well, listen, we're a couple minutes early, but I appreciate everyone's time and consideration and feedback today. I enjoyed these conversations immensely because it helps me view the market through other people's eyes, and that's super beneficial. Before we close up shop, I just wanted to remind all of you a few things. If there's any vendors that you feel are great to potentially add to our vendor marketplace as we're launching it on July 15th, please shoot me a message or have them reach out to me. I'd love to have them be part of that process. Second, please remember we're excited to have a contest for the month of June for referrals. So if there's anyone that in your network that you think would benefit from being part of the talk community, it's a really easy way to refer them. And right from the members, you can click the link, or from the email I sent out, there's a link in that. And please refer your friends. The more people who are part of the talk community across the country, the more dynamic and more engaging we can make it, and move to physical events at a more common base, and get a little deeper in terms of what we can do as a community. So appreciate everyone's time, and exceptionally appreciate the thoughts and feedback. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I will close it up. I'll return everyone 7 productive minutes of their day. So thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.